Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and Frank is not with me today, but my friend Bobby is there. That's why I knew it. I had to say it somehow, but doesn't matter. I'm not starting over again. Bobby, how are you today?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. Thanks for being here. Last second, Bobby and I are here to talk about the Penguin, but before we do that, we're going to talk about what we're drinking. Bobby, what are you having today?
I just got a good old-fashioned Corona.
Can't beat it. Yeah, it's great. You can't beat a good Corona, though I very much approve of your Infinity Gauntlet bug.
Yep.
Excellent.
I don't remember where I got this, but it's really cool.
It is great. It is great. I am drinking an Allagash Gatherwell, which is a bourbon barrel aged stout from Portland, Maine. Ooh. It's an excellent beer. If you can get anything from Allagash is great, but their the Gatherwell is really, really good. Do recommend. Though it does have an 11% content. So, drink responsibly. But Bobby, we're here to talk about the Penguin.
We're going to do much more than 11% content.
Yeah, aren't we just? So we're here to talk about the Penguin. We'll do a thought, like did you like it or not like it? No spoilers for both of us. And then we'll just get right into spoilers because it's hard to talk about it without really getting into some of the meat of the story. So, Bobby, Did you like it?
I really, really had a good time with this one. Like, we were talking pretty much week to week as this was going on. This is like prestige television in a way that, like, I'm a fan of a lot of different DC shows that have been on Max and things like that. But stuff like, as good as it is, like Doom Patrol, Krypton, haven't really met the same, like, prestige as Penguin gets. And every episode in this one is just a winner.
I agree with that. I think there's been some really quality DC television content for a while, but I think the Penguin is just far and above anything else. Mm-hmm. It's got that, I don't know, almost like Dark Knight quality to it, where you're like, this isn't even a superhero thing anymore or a comic book thing. This is just beyond its own genre, almost like even like Road to Perdition in some way, right? Like, it was based on a comic, but it just like so much exceeds beyond its original fare, I guess.
Right.
And that's not to say that like what it comes from, because it's based on a continuation of the Batman. It takes place like the week after the movie The Batman ends, but in a lot of ways it even exceeds the Batman. I found it way more engaging, and it is in some ways more character driven, but like it has a lot more time to be character driven, but it fits really nicely into that world. And it's pretty relentless. It doesn't stop. And I loved every second of it. It is easily one of the best things that DC has ever done. And not just new, like DC Studios DC, which isn't that nice? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not just DC Studios, but because technically this is the first thing that has their brand on it.
It gets tricky because he did his whole Blue Beetle is kind of or whatever. But this is like the first official thing with like the logo. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of it, unless you count Superman, the Christopher Reeve documentary, which also has the DC logo on it. So if you count both, so far 2 for 2. They're just they're really just winning. So I'm very happy. So anyway, let's talk spoilers. Through and through. We'll talk spoilers in and out. I'm not going to dive directly into a spoiler. Yeah. So just be warned, everybody. What I think, we talked about this texting a little bit, but I want to say it on the show, is that I just really love how it took what is generally a pretty B character in the Penguin, and not a B character in that he's not important to the Batman mythos or that he doesn't have some quality stories, but he's not, his antagonism comes from like being part of the Gotham world, as opposed to someone like the Joker that's going to cause mass chaos for everybody. Yeah. That's very rare for the Penguin. He's much more of a background player, in some ways almost like the Kingpin, right, from Marvel. But because of that, he can be some kind, like his personality can be an enigma sometimes. And he never really feels, and not Edward Nigma, he never feels as dangerous as some of the other Gotham rogues can. Yeah. And I found in this pretty human-based comic book story that he is kind of just the worst, like as a human. Like just by being in the room with him, he will corrupt you to be the worst version of yourself. And he will somehow get you to think that what you're doing is of your own volition or of your own action, and that you're doing the right thing. It's really interesting because he does it to literally everybody. He does it to Victor as like kind of this clean slate, like nice kid, but he also does it to people who are like trying to start fresh. Like if you look at it from,
he's so good at it in the whole show,
right? Which one actually struck me more than like say his like complete manipulation of Victor or Sophia or anything is actually Maroni, because Maroni is like, Salvatore Maroni is not a good person. Like he's the head of the rival mob family. He's in Blackgate prison. Like he's not a great guy by any stretch of the imagination, but Oz somehow makes him even worse because he like directly, in some ways indirectly, makes him give in to his worst feelings and his worst bits of aggression, and I guess every vice that he has within himself, he kind of like taps into those things and makes you channel that for your own demise. And it's just like, so like Maroni, I guess is where the spoiler is, like Maroni, like
Clancy Brown,
the amazing Clancy Brown himself, like Oz manipulates him into like being part of this gang war, even though he's in prison and like all this stuff, but which causes the deaths of people in that Maroni is close to and his family, whatever else. And so he makes Maroni care so much from when we see him in the first episode, and he doesn't care at all, or the second episode, wherever he appears. Like he has
the first one, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
He has no feeling, no involvement, no anything. And by the end, he dies of a heart attack because he cares so much. Right.
And the scene was so good, but it took me a while to figure out, because I was like eating at the same time I was watching it, and it's a pretty quick, like I could piece it together as I was watching, but I was like, oh, did I just miss the death of like the second main villain of the show?
You sure did. Yeah. Sometimes I feel that way with shows where, like, especially like this, where I'm like, oh no, I zoned for a second and now I've missed several key bits of information. No, what have I done? I got to go back.
No, yeah, I really like just how in this show you're not supposed to be like Oz Cobb, the biggest like crime lord in Gotham or whatever. Like they very much illustrate that he is just, even in the crime circles that he's part of, like total loser. Which is why, like, even though he's this awful person in the context of the show, it's just, you get a sense of like pride whenever he sticks it to like Sal, Sophia, even his mom in some bits, like as bad as that sounds.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean, though.
Nobody in this show, apart from like Vic, is, I think, like a really good person.
No one is. No, I absolutely agree with that. Right.
Yeah.
But that's part of the tragedy of Victor too, in that like he like his home gets destroyed and his family dies because of the Riddler's attack on Gotham. And so he ends up in this situation where he's just like trying to survive because nobody in the city is going to help him except for Oz, which gives you this in on Oz where you're like, oh, he has a heart in some way, like Victor has a heart. So they're connected. Like they're both disabled in their own way. Victor has a speech impediment and Penguin has a clubbed foot. And so they like bond over this
I really like
vulnerability.
Club.
Me too. Great. It was like really gross. It's awesome. And you know what his club foot reminded me of when you see it, when you take it off? It looked like the Penguin's like flipper from Batman Returns, like, but in foot form. And it was awesome. It felt like this really nice bit of like a nice intertextuality or nice callback. Like, you know, this is
also
for you
so
people.
Cool because like Colin and Danny DeVito, like they're pretty good friends.
Are they? I did not know that.
I think they became friends in the live action Dumbo. They were both in that.
Right.
And then they asked Danny DeVito like a ton of questions on press jackets and stuff. Like, what do you think about Colin Farrell? And he's just like, I love Colin. It's so good.
That's awesome.
That's another thing too. Like, throughout each episode in this show, apart from episode 4, because like I don't remember if he was in it. It took me like I was just astounded that this is the actor Colin Farrell.
You know, people said that about watching him in the Batman too, like, and I agree. But it's in this show really more like that allows him to really flex those muscles, and he becomes less of a caricature in a lot of ways. Like he's like, I'm, Italian Brooklyn mob boss guy.
Take it easy, sweet guy.
Yeah, right. But in a lot of ways, from this show, you feel like a lot of that is kind of an act in of itself. Like all of it is just to throw people off his scent as much as possible, which I really appreciate. But it's funny because there are some scenes in the show in some episodes where he is really unrecognizable. And then there are others where you can really see it in his eyes, like obviously, because that's like the only part of him that's not make-upped in a lot of ways. But you can he really is doing all he's
doing the work.
He's doing the work. He's doing a lot of work. And I've never really seen a movie in maybe in the last 10 years, maybe even 15 years where Colin Farrell has not been doing a lot of work. Mm-hmm. But there's something very particular about this character. And he's spoken about the makeup and the bodysuit and being very freeing as an actor that he's allowed to create something so outside of himself. But
yeah.
You can also tell it was grueling. Because I think he said in some interview where he's once Oz is very difficult because the whole show is as a script is 500 pages. And so it gets whereas a movie is only 120 pages generally, and you're not in every scene. But he's in almost every single scene of every single episode. And Oz is a talker, as Farrell said. So once he gets going, he's just always talking all the time. Just goes and goes and goes and goes. And I'm sure that was exhausting. But truly, it paid off because I haven't... Maybe since Heath Ledger's Joker, where I have watched a character, an actor really do something so extraordinarily different with the character, and that's not a joke. I could maybe pinpoint to Tom Hardy's Bane, but that in some ways feels
that's like a whole different beast. Yeah,
it also feels a little bit more like we can caricature it in a way that's more amusing than just like an actor being unrecognizable. Yeah.
Well, he is recognizable as Richard Kind.
Sure was. Yeah.
One of my favorite things about Oz is like you get the sense that he's like this Iago type character. You know, it was so good.
Explain that for our non-Shakespeare fans out there.
Yeah, no, it's just like Iago and Othello manipulates just every single character in that play. And like, he's not the strongest, the best leader or anything like that. Oz is just, he's so good when it comes to his manipulations. And it's like, I got a lot of vibes from Iago, like I said, circling back to HBO stuff, like Littlefinger was a big one.
Yep.
Like, and my favorite thing, because a lot of the manipulations he's doing on like the main characters, Sophia, Sal, Vic, but I love how he uses like his experience with the streets in I think it's episode 6 with all the gang leaders. It could be episode 7, but yeah, he's like using his privileged roots to just get in with it. And I really like that because classic comic Penguin, as you know, is just like I come from old money and stuff. Like he doesn't really have to try when it comes to making alliances and things like that. This Oz is very much on the out. Even if by the end of the show, he's very much an outsider. And I really like that as opposed to just like him gaining all the power, which he kind of does, but
it's interesting.
It's a tragedy.
Like, he definitely gains all the power, but it like in controlling the families and whatever else. But it also is very much he is in an isolated ivory tower by the end, right? You know, so he's in the skyscraper that he and his mom talked about, like looking over the city and all this stuff. But he's alone in doing that, which is so tragic because he chooses to do that, right? He chooses to be alone. So he really full spoilers here, but you know, like his mom has a stroke and she is immobile. And so she's just stuck like with him, but because she can't respond to him anymore. They're both isolated now through the choices that they've made. Hers, like, she made the best decision she could at the time, which led to this. And then, and then him, but the only person there to keep him company is like his prostitute who he is paying to be there. It's not a real relationship.
Yeah.
And you get that at the end because at the end he has the prostitute dress like his mom, like to be his mother instead of his mother who is also in the building in a vegetative state. And so like none of it's real. It's all like everything he builds up even is a facade. Even like when he gets out of his nice new purple car and he goes into the skyscraper to like look over the city, he's got his like top hat, which is a nice little like nod for Penguin fans and whatever else, but nobody wears them anymore. So even like his idea of being on top or like being the heads of the families or the head of the mob or anything like that, or heads of the city, whatever, it's all fake. None of it is actually like real. It's only what he perceives as his reality. It's very, very interesting.
Cutting back to the prostitute, I just wanted to point out that's a segue, by the way.
That's a good segue. It was a segue enough.
I love how a ton of people, I remember when they were like, oh, we're making him Oz Cobb, and Matt Reeves was saying like, we're gonna do like another grounded Batman thing. People were all up in arms and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like my favorite thing is how like comic booky this show is, because the prostitute is
her name's Eve, by the way.
Carlo.
I had to look it up.
Like obviously, I was never expecting her to be like, "Hey, it's me, Clayface's sister," or
Eve.
anything like that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But yeah. I love how like everybody is somebody in this show. There's no like, apart from Vic, there's no like OCs.
No, I don't think so. Everybody's somebody. Yep, Dr. Rush.
Yeah. Everybody was like, "Oh, he could be like Scarecrow or Hugo Strange or whatever." He's just a guy.
He's just a guy, which is totally fine. Sometimes you just need guys, like that's okay. But you're right. Like there's Sophia Falcone, there's her brother Alberto, there's Salvatore Moroni, Johnny Vitti. Like they are Johnny Vitti, Michael
Kelly, Steve Lombard, Man of Steel.
Totally forgot. We talked about this. Totally forgot he was in that movie. No recollection of that whatsoever until you said it, and I was like, "That's where I know that guy." Absolutely. But you're right. I think it pulled very directly from the books. It said these are the real characters. We're going to use the characters, and we're going to do the Falcone family drama justice in of itself.
And I love like the world building in this show. It's become a meme at this point for all the MCU Disney Plus stuff. It's like, oh, we gotta wait for like obligatory cameo. In this show, we only kind of get Mackenzie Bach, who I only really know because Con O'Neill plays Izzy on Our Flag Means Death.
Oh yeah,
and like that's another one of my favorite shows. But apart, like, there's no Batman shuts down the whole Bliss operation. Like, there's some teases, as, like, we'll get to, but there's no, like, this is it. This is your cast.
Which I really like. I like that I, like, walked in and it was all contained. I really didn't even need to watch the Batman to understand most of the show. Anything that was, like, honestly, I don't think I felt like there were any real connections to the world of the Batman outside of the last episode, and maybe some mention of the Arkham, I guess, and maybe some mentions of Batman at the beginning and the Riddler or whatever else. But like once the show gets going, it is really contained within its own story, which was really nice. And I think I saw Matt Reeves say like, well, why doesn't Batman appear or whatever else? And he said it takes place a week after like Gotham is attacked and he's doing other stuff. And he said, which is a hint for the Batman Part 2, is that he said, like, in the second movie, he's going to find out that it's really hard to be Batman. Like, he just can't be in all places at all times. And so this is a good example of that. I mean, even in the comics, like, stuff happens. Batman's not there. All of a sudden, like, someone's got a new operation doing this thing, and he can't, like, it's already moving, No,
I remember people were like, they just needed to, like, give Batman a nod or a mention. And, like, even if you trace it back to the comic, because it's clear Matt Reeves is doing his No Man's Land.
Yeah, this is his No Man's Land, right?
Yeah. Like, Bruce in that book, Batman's missing because he's dealing with all, like, government officials and things like that. So, like, I just thought that's what they were doing. It's not a big, we can't get Robert Pattinson back. It's just, like, organic world building.
Right. I just don't think you needed him. Like, that's I think why Batman is one of my favorite comic characters, is that because his supporting cast, but then, like, the supporting cast of the supporting cast is this really strong character work pretty much across the board. So you don't actually need Batman in the world of Gotham to, like, have a good time. Right. And I think that this show, in some ways, even more than the show Gotham, which was
I was going to say,
also-
we had a 10-year show with no Batman.
Yeah, that was
Almost
5 seasons. I think Gotham was 5 seasons.
Yeah.
4 or 5. But it had Bruce Wayne, which was fine. But like, you can do a show about Gotham and its supporting characters without Batman. Let's talk some Easter eggy stuff. Like in the final episode, Sophia gets a letter from Selena Kyle.
Sophia's great.
So she's great. We need to go back and talk about Sophia, but let's do the Easter eggy stuff first. So, there's Sophia, gets a letter from Selena Kyle. There's the bat signal at the end, all fine. Yeah. And then I didn't ping this when I was watching it, but I've seen a lot of people talk about it online now, where when Oz goes into one of the courtrooms or whatever it is, the council chamber, all the curtains are dramatically in the shape of owls. And so kind of hinting at Court of Owls. And I feel that's far too purposeful to be incorrect, especially since the way they've talked about the second movie, everyone's like, oh, it's Court of Owls, which is great. I'm very excited for that.
Court of Owls makes so much sense.
Especially since if the whole first movie is about like the corruption of individuals and who actually pulls the strings and whatever else. And so to just like peel that layer back even further within the second movie with the Court of Owls, fantastic. Absolutely.
Could you imagine after seeing The Lighthouse and just how good of an actor Pattinson is, how raw the maze scene.
Oh, the labyrinth scene. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. Can't wait. Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. Well, let's go. Unless you have other Easter eggs you want to talk about, I want to go back and talk about Sophia.
There's one thing that I wanted to share on a public platform, and it's the fact that I think it's in episode 5. Penguin has TikTok on his phone, so that means that he knows about the Costco guys.
Oh my gosh. I thought you were going to say the show takes place before January 2025. We knew.
No, I'm just thinking about that because, even though, like we said, he's become more of a character than just like the big Italian guy. Like that's what they're known for. So I just think that's really funny.
You're lucky that you got some flashbacks with him as a kid and you're like, no. That's who he was before TikTok. It's cool. We already knew he was like that. It's a
double chunk chocolate cook.
No. I want to talk about Sophia because I think as much as Colin was a standout in the show, like Sophia Falcone was equally a standout.
Yeah.
In some ways, if not more.
I was going to say, I think I like her more.
Yeah, I think she's doing less of a bit in some ways, right? Because just by the nature of the way they've molded the character. But this, whereas Oz is, we can call Oz's story a tragedy if we want to, because tragic things have happened in it. However, he is responsible for the tragedy in his own life purposefully. And he does not see the actions that he has done as tragic. So his story is not tragic. His story, as the show says, is about the devil, and he is the devil, and it's awesome, which is something that you normally ping on the Joker. So I actually really love that. It's like,
and the Joker didn't do that.
He did not. No, he's getting thrown right at the Penguin. I really like that. And so, I mean, Oz is responsible purposely for the deaths of his brothers and the tragic decline in his mother. And where she is like, I'm going to kill my son because he killed my kids, but instead I'm going to manipulate him and because I can't kill one more child can't die no matter what he's done. It's just really complex and layered storytelling. But Sophia's is actually a tragedy because all she tries to do is the right thing early in her life, right? Like a lot of philanthropy for abused women and all this stuff. And her own father sends her to Arkham to cover up his own crimes, which then turns her into an abused woman herself, the very people that she was trying to help. But then she can't escape the very cycle that she was kind of put into, as many abused people cannot. They cannot escape their own cycle of abuse. And so, like, Arkham, instead of curing her, turns her into the very thing that she is, like, trying to help and overcome. And it's just really sad. It's just really sad.
It is, yeah. Like, is episode 4 the Sophia episode?
I'm not positive, but I can use, we typically on this show only do one lookup a person, but I will use this as my lookup for you. How's that?
Awesome.
Yes, episode 4 is her Arkham episode.
Yeah, everything in episode 4, like, it's just so good. Kristen Melody is, honestly, I think she's my favorite actor on the show, just in general.
Which is saying something, considering that you have like Clancy Brown and Colin Farrell,
and you know how much I love Clancy, right?
I know you love Clancy. you love him so much. Even Shorey, my gosh,
I know you're talking about.
Yep, she has the really cool voice. Played Mrs. Maroney.
Yeah, I know her from Arcane.
Yes, she was that doctor in X-Men: The Last Stand that one time. Yeah. She's been on Star Trek, been all over the place. But like, they're all great, What the show did with Sophia Falcone is, like, the show's called The Penguin, but it is also about her, which I really like. But I like that it's not in service of Oz. You know, like, it could have gone into, like, obviously Oz comes out on what he sees as the top at the end, but I don't feel that like Sophia was just used to get him there. Like, it was real plot conflict where it could have been either of them. And truthfully, what I love more than anything, even though this was absolutely worse for her, is that she's not dead at the end of the show.
So good. I miss when
villains didn't die.
Villains didn't have to die every cinematic thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love when a villain stays alive.
The only real consistent villains in, like, comic book movies and stuff are, like, Gene Hackman, Lex, and, like, Magneto.
Yeah. It's a good own question. So Gene Hackman's Lex is in 3 out of the 4 Superman movies. Magneto is in 3+ X-Men movies. Loki, I guess, would be
another
one.
But yeah, it's such a cool feeling that, like, we're getting. Obviously, we have, like, this universe already has, like, a ton of villains with Penguin, Riddler,
who also didn't die at the end of the movie, worth noting. Yes. If I was kind of mapping, I was thinking about, like, the Batman Part 2 and Batman Part 3, and I feel like if Part 2 is the Court of Owls, if it's contained within the Court of Owls, and the court, in a lot of ways, is what is unknowing to Batman and everybody else, unknowingly, like, constraining in weird way, the madness of the city. And so then if their demise at the end of 2 means the full unleashing of, you know, like, all this chaos, the rival of the supervillains, in some ways that could be a very cool story. Potentially character overloaded, but still cool.
But one of my favorite bits, which originally wasn't back in the Batman, was when the Joker scene happened in Arkham. Because as DC fans, we, like, kind of see Joker, and we're like, oh, they have to do an obligatory thing with the clown guy.
Sure.
But I rewatched the movie not that long ago for Halloween stuff. It's very, very clear that scene was, like, death to the mobsters and like rise of the supervillain.
Absolutely.
Especially with like Oz. We didn't really know it at the end of the movie, but like becoming more like his comic counterpart-ish.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yep.
And like I'm really interested because Sophia Falcone, she's like in the books just another person to die in like Long Halloween.
Yep.
Like it's really interesting.
Dark Victory. Pretty sure she's around in Dark Victory.
Yeah. But like it's really interesting that like they're going to the extent to kill all the other like mob guys apart from like Penguin, and I get like Black Mask if he shows up.
Yep.
That they're keeping Sophia. And I think that's just like a testament as to how good of a character she is, how much story potential Matt Reeves and co are like cooking up.
Yep. They see in her. Well, I mean, they also like look at it in a way that going back to Arkham is much worse fate for her than death.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
I also like how Arkham is just hell.
It's terrible. Yeah. Even though like all you see is like you see an interview room or like an examination room and the hallways and the rooms, but it is a terrible place. Like it's so claustrophobic in the way that it's shot and like designed, and it's kind of like octagonal-ish kind of look. It's really well thought out. Something that we have not talked about with Sophia that I do want to talk about is her like wardrobe and like the decline.
It's really good
because I saw this thread online, which was great. I'll see if I can find it, but to link it. But you can obviously watch that her hairstyle changes and becomes a little bit more manic as her story degrades. But if you watch her outfits, it also is like that. She starts in like this really 1940s, like classic mobster Italian, like Godfather-esque style. And she slowly devolves away from that as she is like just like breaking away from her family, and it like moves to this like punk 80s look. Like it is really well thought. Like everything in the show, if I have not said this enough, is really well thought out. Like there's like there's some great visual imagery. You and I texted about this like in that first episode. Like every time a big important
crossroads,
like every time a crossroads moment happens, there's a train that goes by or stops and like stuff like that. It's just really, really, really good.
It's so good.
One thing I do want to mention before we kind of wrap up on everything, I want to talk about Victor and his path. Because,
I was just thinking,
yeah. So Victor,
which by the way, why would you name a character Vic?
Because he's a victim.
Apart from,
yeah, he's a victim. That's why he's a victim
there were so
of
many people
circumstance.
just being like, I saw some people like, it's Victor it's Victor Freeze, it's Victor Stone.
It's so funny because I like ignored all of that through this whole show. I wasn't looking for any like, is this character really this character? This like, I just watched the show.
Yeah,
and I had
the best.
10 out of 10. Like, had a great time because I wasn't expecting anything like that. Even like the Court of Owls drapings or whatever else. That's not where my mind was because the show was so engaging within its own
we all know
world.
in the Batman Part 2, Vic is just going to become Mr. Freeze.
Now, of course, obviously, it makes the most sense.
Yep.
No, what I really just loved about the show is that Victor is obviously the heart of the show, right? He's just the good guy drawn into terrible circumstances, and like you see his decline. But what I love, which was such a bold and uncomfortable choice, is that like Oz and Victor become so close, they see each other at their most vulnerable, and Oz can't have that, so he strangles and kills Victor. But because Victor is the heart of the show, like Penguin in his own way, like kills his own heart. Any last remnant of virtue or feeling or goodness that is left inside of him, he kills with his own hands and stomps out and leaves for dead. It's just really raw and unsettling in its own way. Even the way that he kills him, it's like long and mangled. Like, he could have shot him.
Mm-hmm.
He could have done a lot of things to kill him instantly. And it's a sadly slow death that he gives to this guy who he brought in himself because he saw enough of himself in this kid, right? You know, the disability and whatever else. And that's really what, in this time that passes, this, like, you know, he still feels something. Penguin is still human in some way. And by the end of this show, by doing this, he like kills off whatever is left of his own humanity by killing Victor. And it is because he kills the weakness within him. It's just really good because the show doesn't say any of that. That's what I love. Like, it's there for you to think about, to analyze. And because other shows, especially comic book shows, would like turn to camera and be like, so anyway, I can't believe I just killed Victor, the guy that was the representation of my heart. And now I have no heart. Looks down at camera, you know? So I just love that it was just there for us to take in. It's awesome. It was just really good.
Oh yeah. I thought, like, I expected the Vic death coming, which that was really funny as we were texting.
That was so great. Like, Victor's such a great guy. I love Vic so much. 50 minutes later, man, that's upsetting.
Throughout the entirety of the show, there's things like his girlfriend and like the interconnectivity to the Batman. That's another thing that, like, I really love because it's just organic world building. The fact that his folks got killed in Riddler's, like, bombing of the city.
Well, in a lot of ways, it's almost like you actually miss that feeling in the movie, like because you're not connected to anybody that, like, goes through any particular type of struggles. So then, like, you really, it makes it so what Riddler has done so much worse, because not only did the Riddler, like, kill Vic's family, but it led to Vic's moral, like, decline and then his own death. Like, it's just, really
And
good.
I also, like, that scene illustrates that, like, I remember when the Batman came out, everybody was like, Riddler was in the right because everybody was, like, corrupt or whatever. It's still showing, like, Edward Nashon is insane.
That excellent point. Had not considered that, because Riddler's whole point is to, like, stick it to the man and the 1% and everything, but all he ended up doing is hurting people who are already hurting, who actually, because of the city. So he didn't really fix anything. Like, he just hurt innocent people, like actual innocent people. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I love Vic. Was one of my favorite characters. The club scene, when it's like he's getting PTSD, and I don't remember if he's on Bliss or if he's just,
I don't think
like,
so. I think
it's
just PTSD from the lights. Yep.
Yeah. But, like, that scene is so good because, like, people apart from even Oz, like, care about Victor. That's how I thought he was going to die at first, because you know how the mom is, like, really nice to Victor. I thought originally Oz was going to see him as, like, a threat because of, like, how unstable the relationship is with his mom, which kind of it is, but not. I mean, that's pulling a stretch.
A little bit of a stretch, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
One thing if people have not watched the show and they want to go back and watch it after our conversation, where we spoiled some things, but not all things. There's actually a lot in here we have not talked about, which is fine. But
we talked about TikTok more than some
things, yeah. But there is something I do want to pin people's attention towards when they're watching it, is how well scenes of communion are used. So, like, when people are eating together, it's like a sign of bonding and friendship or whatever. And, like, there's so many of those in this show. Yeah. Maybe because so many of them are Italian, and so, like, there's, like, just, like, a lot of, like, people eating and, like, bonding over those moments and whatever else. And I think all the way starting in episode 1, it's almost in every every scene. One of the best ones is with Maroney and Sophia, where he's cooking Iranian food, like after some stuff has happened, and he's like walking her through it and telling her about it. Like, but so not only is it bonding over food, but it's bonding over different ideologies or different cultures or different ways of doing things, because they're from opposite mob families or like and everything. And so it's like the bridging of their two, I don't know, vice styles.
Yeah. I also really like how Maroney never technically allies with the Falcone. Like,
that's right,
she's
because
Gigante.
She's a Gigante or whatever. Yeah. That's
Gigante.
Very good point. Very good point.
This show is so good.
I don't normally go back and rewatch things, but I will go back and watch this again.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
Like I said, it's prestige, but it's not like beat you over the head with it.
Nope.
You know?
Nope, it is not beating you over the head with it.
It's very much a comic show.
And every episode is worth your time. It's just always a new... There wasn't a weak episode in the bunch. Every single one just really hits home. It's
I
awesome.
also like how the show, it starts out. Like, there's not this big, massive conspiracy or whatever. Like, who inherits Carmine's... Like Penguin just kills Alberto because he made fun of him.
Yep. I love that connects to things later in the show, but also you're right. It's just like this heat of the moment decision.
It's a thing that happens.
Spirals so much. It's just wild how, in a lot of ways, realistic that is. Maybe not like the murder necessarily as like full on realism, but like how one decision can literally change the course of someone's entire life, and then the lives of so many people, and on and on and on from there. It's just right, because if like he didn't do that, maybe he would have left earlier. He never would have met Vic, and like so on and so on and so on and so on from there. Just a really, really good show, and people are talking about season 2. I don't know if I want a season 2 because like this
I don't
story.
want a season 2. I've told people I do not want one.
This story told the story it was going to tell, and I have to see the Batman 2 to know like what would be worth telling after that. Because like when they announced the show, they were like, "It's the rise of the Penguin in crime families in the underworld." And I'm like, "Well, that's great. That's awesome, 100%." Yeah. But but it's not my job to come up with these things. That's their job. So hopefully, but as in the world of the Batman, 2 for 2. In the world of the new DC Studios right now, 2 for 2 every like. So I'm very excited. But
like I would much rather like a Catwoman show. The Arkham show DCU or is it still this? I don't remember.
I think the Arkham show is dead. I'm pretty sure that went by the wayside.
I remember like it was originally a GCPD show,
which became the Arkham show, and I think there's something else. There's something still working in there, but I do like that it's its own little offshoot, like of the DCU.
Which,
I don't want it in the real DCU.
Yeah. Speaking of the Arkham stuff, I like how, like I said, everybody is somebody. Like Magpie.
Yes, right.
Being Sophia, like, and she's not like a Poison Ivy where it's like.
No, they use Poison Ivy in a weird way.
Civil.
Yeah, no, you use Magpie, like right on, like good for you. No one's ever going to use Magpie.
A cool way to establish your villains.
Yep, I agree. Yep. Well, Bobby, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us on Beer with Geeks. You can find us on Beer with Geeks at beerwithgeeks.com, and you can find us on X and Instagram and whatever else. And you can find all other Thought Bubble Audio shows at thoughtbubbleaudio.com. So until next time, cheers.